Tovim and Lila Potov. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening. This is Carrie. I am going to just wait for a few minutes to see if I can have anybody join me on here. I think I have somebody at the door, but that can be waited on. Anyway, the main reason why I wanted to come in on here today, did want to let you know that I am healing up from my accident, but my brain still isn't quite functioning the way that it needs to. It was kind of a triggering event. In fact, it was very interesting because much of what I'm feeling is the same things that would happen when I would go through my CPTSD emotional flashbacks. So I'm very familiar with what's going on in my body right now. So if I seem a little absent-minded, it's because I'm not quite all there yet. Some people would say maybe that I wasn't all there, but that's okay. It didn't take the accident to make it happen. Anyway, I got to laugh about myself because some of these things I just find really funny, just how life unfolds. What I wanted to be able to share with you guys today was some clarification. So I wrote a couple notes down because I just been having conversations and I don't think I've done a really good job clarifying certain topics or certain words that I use. And as much as, well, any words that anybody can use can trigger things within us that we need to deal with. We use one another to be a reflection of that which was in us, the mirror technique. And it's so important to be able to recognize and identify these things so that we can bring healing and manifest it within. So I thought that what I would do today, probably not going to take too long, as I have other things that I'm wanting to focus on, is just talk about a few of these topics or these words that tend to promote some sort of a trigger mechanism when people hear it. First, let me say that when my husband and I are sharing from the sacred languages, it's just information. That's all it is, especially when we go into word definitions or letter definitions. It really is just information. Good morning. Good morning. Very happy to see you guys here. It's just information. What we do with the information is we will attach an emotion to it or we will connect it to a narrative, either something that has been played out in our life or something that we are going through ourselves. Good morning, Christopher and Greg and Jamie, and for the others that are joining on here today. So when we attach things to a narrative, things begin playing out in our lives that are really meant for us to take a look at. Because if it's triggering something that keeps us from our shalom, then there's a reason why it's happening. So one of the things that I wanted to address today is that what Ken and I are sharing as information is not a new religion. We are not creating a religion. We have plenty of those in the world to choose from. And if you like that kind of environment, then there's many out there that will make themselves available and open their doors to you. What we are sharing with you is a way of potential, meaning the information is there to help guide you, but by no means is it a religion. When Yeshua came to teach the way of one, he wasn't teaching a new religion, but a religion was made out of him and kind of bypassed a lot of his teachings. So that is not what we are doing. And because religion, when you look at the etymology of the word, means return to bondage. The sacred languages are meant to set you free and liberate you from your own limited thinking and mindset and expanding your consciousness by bringing more light in. So I just want to clarify that right off the bat. This is not a new religion. I don't have anything to do with that. I came out of that bondage into a sense of freedom. Second, when my husband and I share, we are sharing from the place of our limited perspective. By no means do we say that we are seeing everything in its totality. We are sharing from the place of the sum total of our ingathering to this place, which is where we are all at. Some of you having gathered light and you've had an expanded consciousness, your heart has been opened. And when you share with others from your experiences, it is from that place, but we still have much more to go. We have much more to grow and mature in. And so we just are sharing from that limited perspective. So please, whenever I share anything, understand, please, that that is where I'm coming from, and that I'm only sharing from the place of my own experiences in what has happened, what I have seen and ingathered, and what the sacred languages are presenting to me for my next steps. And if it is something that you can utilize, great. If not, just flush it, walk away. I'm not attaching any real emotional attachment to what I am sharing with you. Good morning, Sandy. It's, again, there is no emotional attachment to it on my side, especially when I go into the letters and their definitions, because it is just inward formation, information. That's all it is. And again, you can discard it or you can utilize it. It makes no difference. They are a language of light and love. And when I mean love, it's all encompassing love, love without conditions, that is just bringing forth revelatory pieces to put together in your puzzle for the spiritual walk that you find yourself on. The next thing I want to discuss is inculcation. We have used this word many times because this is actually a Hebrew concept, a Hebrew and Aramaic concept. And when you take a look at how in ancient times, how they were instructed, many times there would be things that would be repeated over and over again. And I know for some people that probably is very discouraging and you would like people to move on with the information. But first of all, there's many new people that are joining the channel every day and they haven't listened to over the 500 videos that we have posted in a year. So when we inculcate, it's trying to bring people up to speed, but it also is multi-purposed, because just like when we were growing up, when we learned our ABCs, we had a song that we learned to sing. And we would sing it over and over and over again. We would learn it in school and then we would go home and sing it. We would drive our parents crazy. At first, they thought it was cute and they would sing it with us because we all learned it. And after a while, you're just like, oh, can we move on? But through the inculcative process, that's how we learned our ABCs. So as I am sharing or Ken is sharing, you will hear concepts repeated over and over and over again. And this is not indoctrination as you would see it to be, but you could connect it that way. And if that's the way you choose to see it, there is no wrong, no bad, no right, no nothing. If that is how you choose to see how we present things, then that is your perspective. And I'm fine with it. But I do know that for many of you who haven't actually gone into the language and studied it yourself, you are listening and hearing to us presenting this information. And through inculcative processes, you can begin to absorb this information. So if I say the letter Aleph, you can begin to look at all of the meanings that you have ingathered from the many times that you've heard it speak about it. I'm hoping that makes sense. Or the Lamed, or the Dalet, or the Gimel, because we repeat it over and over again, because some of you don't necessarily want to dive into the languages, or you don't know where to start. But this is seed planting. So I just wanted to clarify that it is meant intentionally so that we can get this information absorbed into us, so that eventually we don't have to continue repeating it, because we will already know it and recognize it. And when we begin to see the letters, all of that information will be able to come at light speed back into your consciousness level, so you can process what has been written to you for your edification and for your maturation process. The next issue that I want to talk about is the beast ego. And the beast ego is something that is very triggering when I say it. There's been much conversation about the ego and the vilifying of the ego. And by no means am I trying to create the ego as a villain. It is a very necessary tool for us to be able to see our world, experience our world, and to be able to relate to one another as separate through our experiences. It is very, very necessary, and I am not going to vilify it. When I say beast ego, you mean part of it is I will own my end of it by not making it clear. I would love for people to ask me questions, but I know that sometimes that's difficult and people don't want to ask questions for whatever reason, whether it's insecurities they have or potential fear of rejection. I don't know what it is, But I always welcome questions so I can bring about clarity. And I wish that I would have remembered a long time ago when I began saying beast ego to clarify what it was, because I know that for some people it has been very hurtful. But that's a trigger opportunity for you to go in and see why that phrase has hurt you, because that was never the intention. It is just information. So, beast, one of the words for beast in Hebrew is bahima. And bahima, when you take a look at it through its letters, bet, hey, mem, hey, in a very, very simple definition, inside reveals the chaos to you so that you can see it. I'm going to say that one more time. Bet, inside, hey, reveals, mem, chaos, hey, so you can behold and see it. That is bahima. That is the word for beast. So when we have chaos that is ensuing in our lives, or chaos that is coming to the forefront of us, that is our shadow side. So when I say beast ego, it has to do with the behema. It has to do with that is going on in the inside that is producing a chaotic nature that is coming forward as our shadow, to be able for us to see it so that we can go within and deal with it, so that that beast nature can then be transmuted into chaya, a living being that is no longer controlled by the chaos that is on the inside of them. I hope that brings clarity. If it does not, I would ask that you would ask me questions. And I stream through I can see your comments, whether you are on Facebook or on YouTube. And if you have a question about anything that I just said, if you could type it all in caps, I would be more than happy to address it. So again, one more time, the beast ego is simply your shadow side. It is what is on the inside that is revealing that is bringing chaos so that you can see it. The Hebrew word bahima. Beautiful enough is that when we translate things from the Hebrew and then to the Aramaic, that hey on the very end of the word that is revealing something to you, your shadow, when you allow yourself to do your shadow work, take your light, take your revelation and shine it into that shadow so you can transmute it, it then becomes the Aleph, which is the embracing of oneness unity. So what I would love for you to do, instead of taking it in a negative spin when you hear the word beast ego, and I will do my best to clarify it when I use this phrase, please take a look and connect it to your shadow. Because really what your shadow is the place of your wounds that happened to you when you were a child and you had no way to be able to verbalize and vocalize it. So the things that happened to you when you were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, even though by the time you're 5 and 6, you can begin to vocalize, but some of those emotional responses that we have to chaotic stimulus that is coming our way, we have no idea how to process this. And it causes trauma and it causes wounds that then get suppressed within us. So when your shadow begins coming forward, it has to do with the wounds that you were never able to process as a child. It is your wounded child that is acting up. As a matter of fact, I had, when I was meditating on this on the other day, realizing that I needed to bring clarity, that the beast ego, when it manifests as our shadow, I saw this picture. It cracked me up, because I saw this like dragon face, and dragons aren't what we think they are, by the way. But in my mind, I saw this picture of this gnarly, scary dragon face that had raised itself up. And it was like, okay, Spirit said beast ego. I'm like, okay, well, no, I totally see that. I see the picture. I see what is being shared here. And then all of a sudden, the Spirit said, now dig deeper. And this image of this gnarly face beast shadow that had presented itself zoomed back in to be a small child who could not be consoled, that had tears streaming down its face, that was beet red, that was just doing all it could to be able to communicate in its limited fashion, but had no words to be able to articulate what was going on, but was only feeling raw emotion based upon the trauma, the fear, the anxiety, the separation, you name it, rejection, abandonment. So when our beast ego shadow raises itself up, it is meant for us to look at it and bring consoling to the inner child that was wounded, that never was able to be attended to in the way it needed to, because our parents weren't able to do that and provide that for us. I'm not blaming our parents. What I'm doing is I'm pointing all the fingers back at myself to say that I'm the responsible one. It is my sovereign and your sovereign work that we must do to raise up our wounded child, because we're stuck in that place. So that light goes in to show the shadow so that we can heal our wounded child and bring it forth in maturation so that we are no longer stuck there. I hope that makes sense. So from this point forward, when I mention beast ego, I will try to use the phrase synonymously, your shadow self, the inner work that is being revealed to you in the moment, or if you're seeing it in someone else. Again, whatever you see in somebody else, that is a mere reflection of what's going on inside of you, if you are engaging in an emotional response to that which is being presented to you. Hopefully that makes sense. So if their beast ego is projecting on you and then you have an emotional response to it, then that is letting you know that there's something with the shadow work tied into a wounded nature of you that is needing to be healed and transmuted and alchemized into a place of neutrality because it's been healed. You allow yourself to feel through it. You don't attach to a narrative. You don't go back and you picture what happened to you and then project it that your mom and dad hurt you, or your babysitter, or your boyfriend, or a stranger, or a teacher, any of that. You attach it to the emotion at the moment and feel the emotion and detach yourself from the scenario. That's how we deal with the beast ego nature. That's how we transmute it, through love and light, so that it can be brought into a place of neutrality without having any distortions attached to it. That is how we get into unconditional love. Now I want to discuss the poor and destitute. This has to do with the letter Rosh, and it's literally the definition of Resh Aleph Shin. Resh Aleph Shin also means first, top, first fruit, leader, chief, chieftain. So these are wonderful, beautiful attributes, but on the other side of it, same word, same spelling, means the poor and destitute. And the Rosh means about raising the head up, becoming a leader. So when I use this phrase, I apologize that I didn't connect it to our journey in maturation. Hebrew and Aramaic are meant to give us a spiritual journey from the time that we are born into the time that we mature into the leadership role over ourselves as sovereigns over our own soul. So when I share these things with you, it is about your spiritual maturation in your earthly walk, in your flesh suit. And this isn't targeted. When I say these things, they are word definitions. So if any of these word definitions pierce you, and the only thing that you hear is poor and destitute, yet you don't hear being raised up to be a first fruit leader, then there is something on the inside of you that is connecting to being poor and destitute. Because I am not, again, every time I say anything, I'm pointing it at me. My husband uses this phrase called broadswording. And I used to get so ticked off at him when he would do this. I'm just being really honest, because I took everything personal. And the reason why I took everything personal is because I had so many freaking wounds that needed to be healed, that everything was like projecting upon me. And I was going into these woundings areas that I couldn't put words to, but they would trigger me. So when my husband mentioned broadswording, and he would be sharing something with me, and he would be making a blanket. Again, brain is triggered from my car accident. I'm having difficulty with my words right now. Blanket. There we go. A blanket statement. That's what I meant to say. Oh, I'm telling you, sometimes trauma just really messes up the brain a little bit until we get everything back online. So he would broadsword, and he would say a statement that would be broad in nature. And I would I would look at him and I'd say, "Are you talking about me here?" Because he would make this broad statement, right? And I would personalize it. And then he would say, "If it is affecting you and you think it is has something to do with you, then it does have something to do with you. But I'm not pointing the fingers at you. I'm making a generalized statement as if I would be making a generalized statement to anybody that I would be speaking to, whether it be 1, 5, 10, 500, or 1,000 people. It is a generalized statement. So if the language is saying a generalized statement and you hear poor and destitute instead of hearing raised up first fruit leader top, then that statement that you are hearing has to do with a wound that is trying to be surfaced through your wounded child, your shadow self. Because the resolve is in the journey through the sacred languages in our spiritual maturation, these letters will bring you forth from being spiritually poor and destitute so that you are a first fruit leader over yourself, a standing sovereign where the beast ego shadow wounded child is no longer controlling and manipulating you because you've brought it forward, you've healed it, you've matured it, you've embraced it, you've accepted it, and you've learned to love all of your bits and parts and pieces because you've brought them into oneness unity, which is the activation of the Magiera, the Christ anointing within you, the unconditional love bringing all the parts together. It's very easy for us to stay into our higher self where we get revelation. But if we continually stay there, the whole reason why we have that is to bring the light in to show the opposite side of where our wounded child shadow is so that we can heal it, nurture it, restore it, grow it, raise it up to be a first fruit leader. So that's what the poor and destitute is about. And I think if any of us actually sat and looked and actually did a audit on ourselves, we would see that within the last year, we have matured from where we were a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, to see that there literally is a process of maturation. Because the place we were when we were 5 years old is not the same place we are when we are 50 years old. At least let's hope not. Because it is a spiritual journey and we do grow and we do get newer revelations. So when we are children and we are 5 years old, we are spiritually poor and destitute in that we don't have exactly everything that we need to navigate our life and our spiritual journey. And we do require someone to help us along the way, to give us tools and keys to unlock certain things so that we can find the path that is going to bring us the most amount of growth and maturation in hopes to unlock the Christ anointing within us, the Mashiach. So again, if you hear me say poor and destitute, spiritually poor and destitute, this has to do with the place of where we were and where we are going, needing more information that will raise us up to become a first fruit leader and sovereign over ourselves. Again, if these things are triggering you, if they are just information that is being presented, it's a beautiful catalyst for you to go inward to see, why am I only hearing this? Why am I being triggered? Why is this not edifying me? Because the languages edify everyone right where they are at. Sometimes we just can't see it if we're in the moment of being triggered because our beast ego shadow child, wounded child on the inside is trying to navigate through something that it couldn't access when it was younger, being hurt. Now let's move on to the word and phrase being humble and teachable. I know I've had people share with me before that when they hear the word humble, they hear it as humility. Not, sorry, sorry, brain still. Becoming humiliated, there we go. So when I say humble and teachable, many will attach the word being humiliated. This is completely different than being humble and teachable. Humble and teachable is a position of the heart that is in the process of continuing to want to learn and grow. Being humiliated is having something projected and forced upon you that brings forth shame and guilt. So when we hear the word humble and teachable, and we automatically connect it to a place of humility, being humiliated, which is connected to shame, then there is something that is being triggered within you to go inwardly to see why you hear humble and teachable as being humiliated. I will tell you that in a place when we are being humble and teachable, if we have found ourselves in front of a teacher, which is anyone, because as mankind, as humanity, we continually teach one another. If we put ourselves in the heart position of being humble and teachable, that means that we are in the place where we are choosing to learn from one another. Now, if you put yourself in the place of the potentiality of being humiliated, then that is attached to something that has to do with shame, of something that happened to you when you were a child, when you were younger, and you went through an experience where you were humiliated. Maybe it's because you didn't know information. Maybe somebody made fun of you. Maybe somebody called you an idiot, or maybe somebody said you're never going to learn. So now, whenever you hear the word humble, you trace it back to being humiliated. Again, this is information only that is being presented, that has no emotional attachment to it, no bias, and no scenarios. Nothing that would have caused wounding and harm. When we take in the information, that reveals those things to us. So when you hear me say humble and teachable, it is a heart position of wanting to learn and grow from one another so that we can reach oneness unity, so that we can come across to one another, accepting each other as we are in our moment, in all of our beauty, right in the moment where we are at in our experiences, knowing that you will be able to teach me something, and hopefully I can teach you something as we share and have conversations with each other about our life's journey and what we are bringing to the table as we are interacting with one another. That's what that means. Then if you hear me say the word child, childish, adolescent, young, youthful, if these are bringing in negative ways of seeing, then again, this is also something that has to do with early childhood woundings, because when it's attached to the language, it is information for inward formation that is to reveal something to you. We all were at one point a child. We were at one point all in the place where we didn't have information that was needed and we needed to be instructed. And we were all at one point not even aware of a spiritual path. So the need was to be able to connect to the spirit that then would lead us into all truth. So until we learn to connect to the spirit within, we stay as a child. And many times children will act out of their wounds and they will do things that could potentially cause harm to someone else. Why does a child hit their brother or sister? Because they're frustrated and they don't know how to put it into words to say, hey, I'm frustrated right now, so I'm going to go and bop you on the head, or I'm going to smack you in the face, or I'm going to bite you, or I'm going to pinch you, right? That is a child that is doing harm. Sometimes we never outgrow that. So when I say childish behavior, I am not pointing the finger at you. I am simply sharing what the languages are showing. Whoa, dog, you just scared the poop out of me. Anyway, if I'm sharing things like that, it's because of not being able to grow and mature at that place where the woundings were, and being able to not hurt one another because we haven't been able to express ourselves. Many times when we act out in that beast ego nature, child wounding shadow, where we are bringing harm to one another, is because we don't even identify those wounds that happened to us when we were younger. So when you hear me say that again, it goes back to the place of things that we aren't even able to fully identify, but they were emotions that were trapped within us that we need to be able to bring the light into so that we can move past that and mature in it. So again, I'm not sharing with anybody when I share these things that you are being childish, unless it is something that is triggering you, that there's part of you that sees yourself that way. I hope that makes sense. The other thing I wanted to talk about is when I'm sharing things from the heart or from the proof room and gathering. If I'm sharing things from my heart, It is from the place of my sum total of the language and what the Spirit is sharing with me, and I am outwardly sharing with you revelations that are coming that I am wrestling with, or revelations that are being brought forward, so that you can still, so perhaps that it will give you another frame of reference, another fractal of light to begin seeing things just a little different. Because as you've noticed, that when we converse with one another, we use different words to express ideas. And sometimes a word that means the same thing, but is different from how somebody else expressed it, same idea, is going to unlock something in you. So that is when I'm sharing from the heart, that is the whole reason for those messages being brought forth. Now, if I'm sharing from the proof room, generally that is from what the letters and the words are speaking themselves. Those definitely don't have a bias. Those are just information being presented. Now, I may bring heart revelation into it, and I generally do. But please understand that the purpose of the gatherings, when the playlist of the gatherings, it is bringing forth the language letter by letter, word by word, verse through verse, so that we can extrapolate out the light that is in the language to be able to shed it on our shadow, our wounded side, so that we can heal ourselves and find our place in 0 point neutrality, where we found the path, the narrow path between the light and the dark, the revelation in our shadow, and rendering it into the place of neutrality, into unconditional love. So I wanted to clarify from what from the heart is versus our gatherings of the letters themselves. And the only other thing that I wanted to say is that when we are sharing things with you, especially like when Ken and I go through our conversations in the morning, excavations at dawn, these are sum totals from the place of sharing from our excavation. We in no way are telling anyone anything. Telling is actually a place of where I would be, or Ken would be, lording ourselves over someone to say that this is how you need to think, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to handle it. And that is not the position that we are taking. We want to share the information for you so that you can take it to the Spirit on the inside to see if it has any validity to you in the moment. And again, if anything that is being shared is triggering you, that is a really, really good thing. And I am okay if you give me a thumbs down on videos. You can give me lots of thumbs down. You can give me thumbs up. I attach no emotional side to it. So I know that some people will do that. Some people have done that because it's a way of them to be passively aggressive because the information is triggering them. And that's okay. It's a really safe way to do it. So it doesn't bother me. I know I've had other people comment, like, why is there a thumbs down? It makes no difference. We're all in process of where we are in the moment. It's what we do with the triggers that are coming our way that are meant to bring revelation to us so that we can deal with those things, to release the inner child from the loop that it continually lives in and has never been released from, by bringing that to be able to heal it and restore it so it can set it free to become this mature, sovereign, standing individuals that are bringing forth their life and love through the Magiera, because we've allowed ourselves to go there. So we are just sharing from the place of the heart. We're never going to tell anything. And we would ask you that if you really want to be able to see what we're saying, to dive into the language yourself. Learn the letters, learn their shapes, go into the Strong's Concordance, go into Hebrew for Christians, go into Jeff Benner's Ancient Hebrew Resource Center. Begin to dig. Go buy the Klein's etymology book. Look at Janet Magiera's work through Aramaic and see that what Ken and I are sharing is through the language itself. There's many times that revelations come through spirit, and then we can usually take that information and it goes right into the languages, because the languages themselves are spirit revelation of light and love. So when spirit is sharing something with us, then the language then backs it up as being a written word, as spirit and truth working together. So I ask that you would take these things into consideration, that you would look into them for yourselves. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm just sharing the summary of my journey. The revelation has come my way to see if it will help you. Because really, I don't need to share. I don't need to hear my own voice. I don't need to broadcast this. There's not a need for me to be heard, let's put it that way. Where I am at is doing what my life's work has been about. But I don't need it to puff myself up. And there's many times where I just want to turn the chair in and do my own study. But I do know that there are people that are seeking. And if my inward journey and my inward light and my inward healing can help you, that's why I want to share it. I don't necessarily want to keep it for myself. I did that for 5 years before we opened this channel. My husband and I had our own conversations for 5 years, allowing the letters of light and love to take a hold of us and mold us and shape us before we publicly open a platform to do the same for you. So thank you for the journey. Thank you for joining us. And I hope that this helps bring revelation to you in clarifying some of the words that we share. And if it is a broad sorting, it is a broad sorting. If it pierces your heart, it's meant to. We had to wrestle it ourselves. It pierced our heart as well. But it did bring forth maturation in ways that we hadn't had prior to jumping into the languages. So again, thank you for joining me today. Still planning on having a conversation with Brandon this coming Saturday. Still planning on having a Zoom session afterwards for anybody that wants to join. Please stay tuned for the details. They will be coming later this week, but they will be at the same times. Brandon and I will be discussing at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time, 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, and then the Zoom meeting will start at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. For anybody who would like to join that will be a live stream also on YouTube. But if you want to interact with those of us on the Zoom call itself, you can. I just ask that you come at least declaring who your name is, even if you don't want to come on camera, because we are being open and transparent with one another in a place of safety where we are sharing hearts with one another, letting the sacred languages share the light and love with us so that we can then have real conversations afterwards in things that it's bringing forth in us. So thank you for being here today. Shalom, shalom, and namaste.